Welcome to Unfiltered Fire, the Friday segment of Unlearn the Crap and Level Up podcast. I'm Kathy Baldwin, and this is where I get raw, real, and radically honest. No filters, no edits, just the truth behind what's keeping you stuck and what it really takes to break free. Now let's light it up. Welcome to Unlearn the Crap and Level Up Your Soul is Calling. I'm your host, Kathy Baldwin. And on today's segment of Unfiltered Fire Friday, I was a little lost as to what I wanted to talk about. To be honest, I normally pre-record these. And Unfiltered Fire Friday is designed for us to connect the current events of what is happening and what it means with the Unlearn the Crap philosophy. As you know, the Unlearn the Crap philosophy is about how we are integrated, interrelated beings, and that everything matters. It's about unlearning the disempowering conditioned responses and automatic programming, both internally as well as externally. It's about learning how to release that which doesn't serve us so that we can level up and be the best versions of ourselves. It's about that level up is coming from our self-knowledge, our self-healing, our self-acceptance. It is about understanding how complicated and interconnected we truly are, so that we can understand what is happening with our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, our beliefs, and all of that which cannot be quantified into the actual experience of what can be quantified. So one of the things that I'm doing is I'm still leveling up, just like you are, just like the whole world is. We're all in a big paradigm shift. And one of the things that I realized is that at almost 60 years old, I did not really know how to access my intuition. And so I've been searching for all sorts of different methodologies to help me connect with my inner self. I know I have a lifetime of crap that has been buried on top of that. And so I'm seeking all sorts of different ways that I can access my own intuition. I've done things like neurofeedback, biofeedback. I've done energy healing with muscle testing. Actually, when I'm working with Dr. Bradley Nelson's emotion code and body code, I didn't trust my own body muscle testing because I know my brain and my mind is so strong, which is why I had my breakdown, because I could override everything that was going on. And so knowing that about myself, I went and looked for a way of connecting. And that came through me using my intuition with pendulums, because our body knows everything and our body can't lie. So I wanted to expand with other ways of learning how to connect with my emotions, my intuition, my heart, my soul, because I do believe that our heart and soul is talking to us. If we're not hearing it, it's because we don't know how to listen. So one of the things that I've been picking up and learning for the last little while is how to read tarot cards. And this morning, I had an amazing journey with this, because I integrated into my journaling. I integrated into my morning routine. I integrated into the questions of what I am going through. And so this morning, I realized that today's episode of Unfiltered Fire wasn't recorded, and I needed to get this done today. But there was so much going on, I couldn't pinpoint what it was I wanted this episode to focus in on. So instead of using my morning routine of journaling and it being a personal exploration, I thought I'm going to experiment. So what am I going to do? As I'm shuffling and I'm calling my divine team, which, by the way, my divine team consists of my intuition, my higher power, my connection to my ancestors, my parents, my grandparents, all of the angels in support, archangels, my higher self, my connection to the universe. I call it all in. That's part of my divine team. I believe we all have that because, as universal laws state, the number one law is everything is energy and energy cannot be created or destroyed. So if I am intentionally connecting to that energy source, that's what I call my divine team. So the very first question I have this morning as I'm shuffling is, I've got this episode segment that I've got to record today. What should it be about? Guide me. So I think I told you that I don't know what these cards are. I'm still learning the meanings of everything. So I'm using my trusty AI source to help me figure this out. So the first card I get is the Five of Swords. So the Five of Swords, if you look at the picture of it, it is some people walking away, almost defeated. Somebody else who's gathering the swords. Some of the swords are laying down. And so if I just looked at the image of this and tried to figure out what this means, to me, it means a battle. That this, to me, is win-lose. Somebody has to win and somebody has to lose. And those who lose, lose big. So when I went to figure out what that actually means, the Five of Swords means conflict, power struggles, winning at the expense of others. And so I started thinking, what are we going through in our current events? Well, one of the most shocking things to me, I've been talking about women's autonomy and our right to our own bodies and our own choices, that each person needs to be fiscally and financially and emotionally autonomous and sovereign. But yet we have a woman who died while she was 9 weeks pregnant. And the hospital and the law is forcing her body to be on life support to bring that fetus to viability. Now, in so many ways, this is beyond disturbing. It is beyond disturbing. Let's talk the financial. Let's start with the most practical, and then we'll move into what I think is the most profound. We have somebody now being forced to take financial responsibility for somebody else's decision. Really? Where does that make any sense? The family's wishes are being overridden, even though the family is now going to be responsible for those decisions. Again, this has nothing to do with autonomy or independence or empowerment or sovereignty over being able to make our own decisions. But now let's go to the thing that I find the most disturbing, because as someone who is always talking about at this age, I'm having to unlearn the crap of what I was born into. Now, if you haven't heard the story, I was a product of a teenage pregnancy. My parents got married. They stayed married their entire lives. They held on to that death do us part, and they honored it. They never strayed. They never loved anybody else. They were 100% committed in owning the responsibility of their actions and their choices. But what about me? What did that do to me, for me? You see, I have had an entire life of believing in my very core, and I can never articulate where this belief came from, but it's just been who I am, that I don't belong here, and that I didn't matter, and that I needed to earn the right to belong. That was built into my core crap beliefs. It was built into my DNA. And so when I learned about epigenetics, and I learned that our DNA and our thoughts and our evolution are all a byproduct of the environment in which we are living, it all made sense to me. Because my mother, her body was filled with shame and guilt and remorse and duty. And all of these thoughts and feelings and emotions of what she was going through became the chemical basis that me as the fetus was growing up in. Well, you know that I talk about the fact that thoughts, feelings, emotions are both energetic, but they are also chemical and hormone based. And if our cells and our DNA are affected by that chemical environment, it makes perfect sense to me that I came into this world with this guilt and this shame built right into my core of my DNA. And so most of my healing journey has been unlearning that crap that has nothing to do with me. But let's come back to this child that is now incubating in a dead woman's body. Her physical body is being kept alive. Her physical body is breathing. The heart is pumping. It's also being filled with a ton of chemicals to regulate the homeostasis of the physical body. But where are the emotions? Where are the thoughts? Where are the feelings? Where is the love? Where is that emotional environment that fetus is now being incubated in? How is that chemical environment or the lack of it affecting? I go back to, I'm a OG Gen X, so I remember growing up. There were thousands of Romanian babies in orphanages that were being adopted around the world. And what they were finding was that so many of those babies were having a condition called failure to thrive. Their physical needs were being met. They were being fed, they were being clothed, but they weren't being held. They weren't being loved. They weren't being nurtured. And so many of these babies, if they did physically live, the ramifications of what it did to their very chemical being, their mental health, their autonomy, their ability to understand self, because those bonds are so important. There's also another study that I heard about with that, which is the monkeys. I can't remember the name of the study, but I remember the study and what happened with it so very clearly. These monkeys who were taken from their mothers and not felt the heartbeat, not feeling the love, the comfort, all of that. These monkeys were again failing to thrive. I come back to a which episode was it? I was this week, and I was talking about a gentleman who is talking about parenting now. I'll put his name in the show notes because my brain is in so many different places. But he was talking about how it is so important to let babies nap attached to us. And so he's going about his busy day, and his child is strapped to him, and that baby is sleeping. And I'm thinking, now that baby is feeling the security of the heartbeat. The baby is no longer sleeping isolated and alone without that energetic connection to its safety net. What did all of that energetic being do to me, to us growing up? When we were raised in an environment by Dr. Spock that said, let babies cry, don't spoil them. But we now know we're interconnected, interrelated beings, and all of that is within the epigenetics. That is who we are being created. So this poor woman has passed away. She's dead. But they're growing this baby in that environment. And that child, if it thrives and survives this traumatic birth and creation, what is this child going to bring to the world? What trauma is it being born into and with and built right into its very cellular structure? It's just beyond comprehension to me about the cruelty of this decision in so many layered ways. But then we're also seeing what's happening within our world. We're seeing the Oval Office with the South African president. The South African president whose country has gone through apartheid in my lifetime. Do you know, growing up in Canada, I met a family who had emigrated from South Africa. And I remember that they were very well off. They were a white couple. And when their family came to visit, and I was in that environment, and I was listening to this conversation as a teenager, I was so shocked and confused by the conversations that were happening. First of all, they smuggled their money out of the country by embedding the diamonds from South Africa into their clothing so they could get their money out. But the older family members that came to visit, they justified apartheid as a humanity thing to do because these tribes of people had so much infighting going on amongst them that they needed somebody to come in and take care of them and bring in the logic and the structure and the rules. And it was their responsibility to do that. But yet, they fled the country. They felt that they should rule other country and change it rather than empowering them, rather than coming to a place of evolution. No, we want to control. And then when it doesn't suit us, we run from the country. I don't get how that works. I'm seeing brain drain. I've talked about this, I think, on last week's. brain drain from the US. And now Harvard is being forced to not have other foreign students come and study with them, even though about 20-25% of Harvard's ability to provide such an exceptional service is how much they are bringing the whole world in. I believe Harvard is going to survive. I believe that Harvard is going to find a workaround. My thought is they're probably going to create an off-campus in another country. And it's probably going to end up being quite thriving, because I can only imagine that they're going to create something that is going to bring out the best of people and their challenges and their thoughts and their opinions. And it will be a collaborative, beautiful thing. But we also see scary things happening all around the world, built on lies, built on the crap of our current patriarchal system that is crumbling. And people are trying so hard to hold on to the past. That is what this card means. And so when I got this card in the reading, I started thinking, how does that connect with Unlearn the Crap and the philosophies and everything that I believe in? Well, that was easy, because I believe in using the universal laws, especially the law of polarity and the law of relativity, as part of our GPS and our guiding. So if this is where we are, then what is the polar opposite of this? Because I believe that our zone of genius resides within the polar opposite of our challenges and what we're dealing with. So if this conflict, this control, this win-lose is what we are currently living with, and humanity is being trampled, and education and expansion and evolution is being trampled and controlled, but yet we have a exponentially fast rising change in our technology. Just yesterday, Google announced a brand new AI model that is going to give each and every one of us the ability to create an AI agent for our personal and our business lives. It is going to fundamentally change how we work with our lives, how we work with our technology, how we work with our phones, how we do everything. You know that my belief is that this fast rising technological change that is happening is the call for our souls, calling us to level up, to unlearn the crap that is keeping us trapped and disempowered and stuck in the mud. And this rise in technology is calling forward our humanness. It's calling forward our empathy, our compassion, our imagination, our innovation, our evolution. All of these things are being called forward. And so I took a look at this card this morning and I said, okay, it's what I'll talk about today on my Unfiltered Friday. It's what the episode's going to be about. And so I began shuffling again. I said, what do you want me to include in this? This is so fascinating, which is one of the reasons why I absolutely am loving the energetic, emotional, intuition connection that I'm discovering through working with and learning tarot cards. Because I was fascinated with how somebody could do it and intuitively connect in such beautiful ways. So the very next card that came, actually these three came all at once. It was the Emperor, the Nine of Cups, and the Two of Wands. So again, when I look up the meaning of what these are, the Emperor is a call for true soul-aligned leadership. Huh. If control and patriarchy is breaking down, talk about the polar opposite showing up. Talk about us seeing the polarity in where the conflict and the challenge is directly connected to the solution. The emperor calls for us to build new systems and structures and create accountability instead of control. It is about calling in that foundation that allows us to actually not only survive, but thrive and be empowered. I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional. Tears are coming to my eyes. For me, if you heard yesterday's podcast, I announced that I am taking this on myself to create structure and systems and automation within my podcast. I am giving myself what I need for me to level up. I'm really excited about this. And I mentioned in yesterday's episode that this podcast automation system is something I'm going to be launching and sharing to the world. That'll happen next week. Let me know if you're interested in knowing more about that. I'll put it in the show notes on how you can get more information. But this card comes up saying we need structure, we need foundation, we need leadership so that we can unlearn our crap and level up. So what came next? Well, I told you 3 cards came out at once. I had the 9 of Cups and the 2 of Wands. The 9 of Cups means emotional satisfaction, receiving joy. It is about fulfillment. And the 2 of Wands is about a vision for the future, a boldness to dream bigger, to go beyond the status quo. This reading ties everything that of what I'm doing, of what I'm believing, of what I'm sharing, how I'm personally stepping into my own zone of genius and owning it. That my zone of genius is my voice, my insight, my ability to see things and to challenge the status quo. It's about waking up a patriarchal system that is still stuck in its mud and its muck. I go against the grain because I'm a square peg in a round hole. I always have been. I've always known it. It always made me feel like there was something wrong with me. But now I know that was because of the crap that I was believing about who and what I should be, instead of stepping into who I am and becoming aligned. I'm doing that now. And the polar opposite of me stepping into my zone of genius is looking at my challenges and my struggles. Well, my challenges and my struggles are the fact that I'm not a detail-oriented person. I am a manifestor in human design. I'm not a generator. I don't do really well with all of the details. And so I am creating structure that supports my zone of genius. And I'm using my belief of collaboration and community to share this. This is how I am choosing to take this time and this opportunity and this darkness that is happening within this world. I'm taking this time to really align with who I am and then fulfill my own needs and share the gifts of the fruits of my labor. I remember I recently did a speech, or it was one of my talks, and I used the example of a fruit tree. The fruit tree creates structure and roots, and it gets grounded. And then it uses its environment, the earth and the water and the sun, to thrive and become the greatest version of its fruit. And then it creates and it bears fruit. But that tree will not eat its own fruit. If that fruit falls and stays at the bottom of the tree, it will create rot. It will suffocate the roots. It will actually damage that tree. The fruit is the gift for the birds, for the people, for the environment. And when we nurture ourselves and we come to a place of personal alignment and we give ourselves the structure and the foundation that each and every one of us needs, we now bear fruit. And it is up to us to give that fruit away, because if we hold on to it, just like that fruit, when it's not shared, it falls, it rots, it creates disease. That's what happens when we're not in alignment. That's what happens if we continue to live in this society, in this environment, where 1% has control and power and the money, and the 99% of the rest of us are manipulated and controlled, and we are expendable and usable. This is unsustainable. This is the darkness being shown to each and every one of us. This is the darkness that has us face that which we have not been able to see because it's been suppressed. Just like I used to say all the time, I wish I knew what was running in the background of my mind, because I can tell by my results that there's something going on there that is taking me off course. But like people who would say the voices in my head and the negative self-talk and all this, I didn't have that. So I knew it was happening in such a subconscious, unconscious level that I could not hear and articulate it. Well, if we can't hear and see and articulate the darkness, how can we address it? How can we move to a place of acceptance and this is what we are dealing with, so that we can make conscious, informed decisions from all options of choices by coming together and sharing various opinions, so that we can see the full universal law of relativity and all the different perspectives that are available to us. That's this messy middle that we're in. This messy middle that we're in is shaking our world. It is shaking our core. It is waking each and every one of us up. Our soul is screaming at each and every one of us. Please, please unlearn the crap and level up. That's what today's reading was about. So while I'm looking at this darkness of the things that are happening, of people suffering, of people losing their autonomy, losing their health care, losing the very systems that were created in order to keep them stuck and not giving them an option, I see this as a really hard, difficult way for us to go back to ourselves, go inward. Don't look to our autonomy and our safety and our foundation externally. This is the very time that is shaking us up and saying what you are doing and what we're living in is unsustainable. And this is going to be freaking hard. It's going to be harder than any and every one of us could ever possibly imagine. My breakdown was traumatic and beyond difficult. It almost took me out, and I made it through to the breakthrough. And every single one of us who's had our breakdown to our breakthrough, we are the ones who are now holding space for the majority to have a place for their own breakdown to break through. That is the purpose of this messy middle. That is the purpose of all the ugliness that we're seeing. We must look at the things that we've been avoiding. We must not pretend that if we don't see it, it does not exist. We cannot suppress the traumas and the pain and avoid the truth, because our body is the physical manifestation of that truth, and it will show the results. So if our inner world is creating this exponential, collective, internal, personal turmoil for the individual and the collective, and it's creating this mess in the physical world, and we're being forced to see it, we're being forced to come to terms with it, then the solution lies in the internal. It lies within you. It lies within me. It lies within all of us. This is the work of our generation. This is what Unlearning the Crap is all about. And this has been Unfiltered Fire. I organize my podcast with show notes. I give myself structure of what I want to talk about. Sometimes I get really passionate, and I sure did today. I hope that my voice and my podcast is waking you up to go inward, to find your zone of genius, to release your crap. Because even if you can't hear your soul calling, you need to hear the soul of the world calling. And it's calling for each and every one of us to level up. I invite you to come further into my world. If you have your own podcast and you want to make your back end as easy and as streamlined by learning more about this automation system that I've created, then click on the show notes. I have all the details on my website. The full beta launch will be coming within the next couple of days. I will be going into first release very soon. The price will go up after beta because this is my birthday present to myself and to you. And if you want to give me a birthday present in return, because I believe my birthday is in 3 weeks, it's June 14th. June 14th is going to be the date that everything goes full on, full throttle, stepping forward into the next act, to the third act of my life, the strongest, most empowered version of who I am. I'm using my birthday as a line in the sand that I'm all in, and I invite you to join me. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Unfiltered Fire Friday on the Unlearn the Crap and Level Up Your Soul is Calling podcast. My name is Kathy Baldwin, and I'm encouraging you to challenge everything so that you can achieve anything. And I can't wait to continue this relationship and this conversation with you. Have an amazing day. Ready to automate your podcast and get your time back? Visit kathybaldwin.me/podcast system to get all the tools, templates, and support you need so you can focus in on what you do best.